Friday night for us is when it starts, right? It's like the foreplay, if you will.
I think of that as the bliss point of communication, when you're simultaneously showing all of the warmth and kindness and loving nature that made someone like you in the first place, whilst also demonstrating boundaries.
Yeah.
Very, very attractive combination.
I was giving a talk with Esther Perel and Dan Savage about relationships, and I've always had a belief, and I still believe it passionately, that for a relationship to work, you have to have best friend chemistry, sexual chemistry, and you have to respect and admire that other person. And they both said, no, you don't need best friend chemistry.
Whoa.
And I thought that was very odd, because I didn't say your husband's got to come to the nail bar with you or come to the hair salon or even go shopping. I never want to go shopping. But my husband's got a shopping radar. After an hour, he says, let's go out shopping. And first we have lunch. And he goes, oh, let's go home. And I'm like, where's the shopping? He went, oh, no, I've only got an hour. I said, well, no, we're not having lunch anymore. And now I say, I'm not shopping with you. But I really believe that you must have best friend chemistry. I have wonderful best friends, but he's definitely one of them. And I was surprised that people said, no, your husband shouldn't be your best friend. I think he should at least be one of them. But I want to ask you on these three things: best friend chemistry, sexual chemistry, and deep respect and admiration. Because every couple I know that is phenomenal, and I've studied them for years, all have those three things. Not constantly, there are times when you don't have sexual chemistry. You've got the flu, something's going on, but I think you must have all of those. But I want to ask you, do you have them? And do you believe that they're all equally important?
1,000%. 1,000%. If you don't like hanging out with your partner, you're kind of screwed. Like,
course.
And I hear what you're saying as well. I have other friends that fit and feel a certain part of me that my husband doesn't feel. I'm not expecting my husband to feel all parts of my personality. He doesn't like watching The Real Housewives. I freaking love watching The Real Housewives. So I have a bunch of friends where we may, have an alcoholic beverage or, a joint, and we just giggle and watch Housewives. And it's like, but I don't think that makes a difference on my relationship with my husband, or it doesn't demean my relationship with my husband. It's just a different part. But if I was stranded on a desert island, he's the one I pick, period. And if it would worry me, and it's just me, like, I don't necessarily think other people have to do this, but it would worry me if you don't choose your partner.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing. I took my husband to yoga twice. I decided not to take him. We couldn't quite get it. But same thing. If I was in trouble, he is my best friend. When I was ill once upon a time, he was the person, because that's the great thing about when someone's got your back and you've got their back. So I'm very pleased that you see Tom as your best friend. And of course you have sexual chemistry. You also respect him. But here's something else. People think with power couples that we call it in England living over the shop. So you probably know that expression. It really means you live over the shop, you wake up and you go and work in the shop, then you go back to the apartment, and you're never away from each other. And don't you drive yourself crazy because you're always together. My husband and I have the same business. And for us, it's amazing. We're really never apart. We travel together, we work together. Occasionally I open my eyes and he goes, babe, I've got a great idea. I'm like, can I just wake up? Can I just not have to talk about business the minute I open my eyes? But on the whole, I love his enthusiasm. But tell me what it's like for you two, because you live together, you work together, you run a business together. So you're always really, I know you said that when you're together, you switch off the phone, but what's it like when you live together and run a business together? Because it is a constant thing. How is that for you? And how do you make that work?
Yeah, we have very strict rules. And we identify our weaknesses and our strengths. So Tom is very bad at noticing if we haven't, let's say, connected or even a date, right? He's just very bad at that. I don't take that personally. It's just his personality. He's not very good at pattern recognition in that way. And so we sat there and he's like, babe, I'm terrible at pattern recognition. Because I'd be like, babe, we haven't had a date in like 2 weeks. And he's like, haven't we? At first I was like, don't you care? What do you mean? Does that mean that you don't think that, like, for the last 2 weeks you haven't been wanting to spend time with me? And it just derails on emotion. And so we just sat down and go, okay, what's my strengths? What's his strengths? So my strength is I'm the one who's very good at noticing if we are starting to drift apart a little. So I'm the one that is responsible for putting date nights in his calendars. I'm the one that's responsible to figure out what we're doing on the date night. And we just agreed. And so because I know him, I don't take that personally. So there's certain things like that. Next thing is, where's that fine line between when you're working and when you're not? Because we both have different habits, right? I like working slightly later. He likes working at 3 a.m. Like, he gets up at 3 a.m. That's how early he starts. So we just put rules in place. Okay, when I'm done working, babe, what I'll do is I'll switch a light on. So this is actually one thing I had doing for a while. I had the lamp next to me, and he was working from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to bed. Because I suffered from health issues, I had to make sure that I was always being able to switch off and have time for myself. But he would come in still in work mode, and I'd be switched off. But because you work from home, you can't tell when someone's working or not working, especially because I had a bad habit as well. I was working in bed, I was working on the sofa, like all of those bad habits. So eventually I was like, all right, I need a signal to tell you I've switched off for the night. And it was a lamp. And so what he would do is he would come in the room with like a work question, and he'd see the lamp and he would go like, love you, babe. And then he'd walk back out. And so we just had those pillars in place. We have weekly meetings twice a week, me and him, it's for a very specific amount of time. We have very structured meetings about what that is going to be about. We have it structured so that it's like dressing tests that we're doing in our company, addressing anything, marketing issues. And we have a structure. So it can't become personal. It can't become, I'm sitting with my husband. It's no, I'm sitting with my business partner. And then the final one, which was hard to come to, but once we did, it changed everything. You can't have 2 CEOs in a company. I'm just going to say you can't, because the second you butt heads, who makes the final decision? You're kind of screwed. So we went in saying, babe, we both understand this could hurt our company if we put ourselves as both CEOs. And so we go back to goals. What's our goal? To build a successful business. Okay, what can get in the way of that? Us butting heads and being paralyzed with decisions. So together we said, okay, if we're both CEOs, we agree that's a bad strategy. Yes, we both agree. Okay, so one person has to be CEO. Do we agree on that? Yes, we both agree. One person has to be CEO. And so we're like, who's the better person for the job? Like, not emotional, just who's actually better with the skill sets that are going to be needed for CEO. And we both agreed it was Tom. Like, I have no ego in that.
That's so good that you both agreed, because I can hear women going, oh, you see, you went right back to that. You let him be the boss, but you didn't. You both decided. Yeah.
And the reason why is it's a selfish decision for me. Like, I'm doing it selfishly because I know it's better for the business. Like, forget about your emotions and your ego. What are the skill sets that a CEO needs, and who is better with those skill sets? And my husband's been doing it for longer. I am much more of like, I bring the team together. Like, I'm kind of a bit of more of a nurturer. And I like that. It's not a like, oh my God, you're being stereotypical. It's like, no, I'm better at it. He's not good at that. I am. So we just go, we both have the goal. We want the company to succeed. So what is better? So I was absolutely unemotionally going, oh, babe, of course you should be. And then when we started to sign the papers, it was quite funny because Tom was like, it should be 50-50. And I was like, well, babe, I actually don't think it should be. You do bring more weight to the table. Like, it's not a freaking ego thing. You do. You're willing to work from 3 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night. Because of my health, I'm not willing to do that. So I just look at the real world scenarios and go, there is a world where I don't want to be, the CEO of Impact Theory. I may want to, I do Women of Impact, so I may want to build that into its own entity. And so I just remove emotion. And from removing emotion, we come to these conclusions. And so I was like, well, no, I actually think you should do 51%. And it was quite funny because the lawyer's like, I've never heard couples argue over this type of equality. Usually it's the man says, I want 51%. And the woman's like, okay, like they kind of relinquish. And I'm like, no, it does. Like, in a business, I get it. And so, but my husband was very adamant. He's like, there is no freaking way on the universe I'm doing 51%, because I need you to know emotionally that we are equal. Even though if we came to a head, someone needs that final say. In this company, you have just as much right as I do. And so we just came to those conclusions. And in going on 4 years with the company, we've disagreed so much twice. And both in those situations, he turned around to me and he said, I've heard you, baby. I'm not convinced. We're going this way. And we've agreed on words to then say. So in response, I say, I disagree, but I commit. And we make sure we say those words out loud.
Because you don't bear a grudge, which is really important. I mean, I'm very lucky because in my business, my husband used to own a whole comedy chain called Jongleurs. He had 22 clubs. And he always said, I know how to manage talent. So he's always seen me as the talent and him as the marketer. Mm-hmm. And we're very lucky because I turn up and teach my method when he couldn't possibly do the content of that. But he's such a genius at marketing. So we're very lucky that. But then he'll say to me, look, you have to let me make all the marketing decisions, and he has to let me make all the content decisions. And actually, we're incredibly lucky because I couldn't do it without him. He couldn't do it without me. So it kind of works. It's that occasionally, of course, there are arguments, but it works itself out. And then rather like you, I have to sort of go to dinner, go, okay, I don't want to talk about work tonight. My husband, he's up at 5, a bit like Tom, and because he like the Energizer Bunny, he can go all night and still be working. And I'm like, no, mm-hmm. I have to have a cutoff time. And sometimes the cutoff time cuts off, but then we need to not talk about work all weekend or all evening. So the other question I used to get a lot when I used to have an advice column for Cosmo and Closer, and people would say, when you run a business, how do you switch the business off and become lovers? Surely if you're around a table talking business, your sex desire goes out the window because you're not lovers anymore. Now, I don't find that to be true at all, but I'd love, if you don't mind, you don't have to tell me anything too revealing, but you can if you want to. How do you keep that sexual passion going when you are working together all day?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this may not work for everybody, but it works for us. We're just so logistically honest and open about things. So it's like, okay, well, typically, are we in the mood from Monday to Friday? Not really, because we're usually exhausted. Okay, but Friday nights is when the weekend starts. So it's just like, okay, if one of us, we're not typically, like sexually driven during the week. And that's just the honest truth. I personally don't know how to switch from being on all day in business with a certain mindset where I have to drive the team forward. I'm talking to Tom not like a wife. I'm calling him out on shit. He's calling me out on shit. So you don't have that chemistry in your body. And so to me, I can't just flip the switch. I can't just go, all right, a second ago I was in business mode and now I'm, this horny being. Like I wish I could. And if anyone out there has a trick, I'm all for it. But I just can't. And instead of fighting it, we've just owned it. And we're like, okay, Friday night for us is when it starts, right? It's like the foreplay, if you will. We have all weekend. We've got time to forget. I switch my phone off now. I've been doing that for about 2 months. On the weekend, you cannot reach me. My phone is off, period. And if there's an emergency, you contact Tom. If you don't have Tom's phone number, then it means you're not close enough to me for it to be an emergency that I have to react in that moment. And so we've made rules like that. So on the weekend, it becomes we play. We play together. We play video games together. We swim together. We giggle together. We watch funny movies together. We watch silly videos together. And for us, that is the foreplay. And so we just allow then, 2.5 days of space to connect again when it's not connected to work. And so again, we've just been very honest and open instead of feeling like, is this, oh my God, should we be having sex on a Tuesday? Like, does this mean something's wrong with our relationship? It's like, no, neither of us have the energy. So why force it? Because once you start forcing it, then it becomes something that maybe you don't look forward to, which neither of us want. You don't want that in a relationship. So we basically spend 2.5, 3 days really freaking connecting, and the other days we don't. Sexually, that is.
You schedule it, which is actually very smart. It's a very smart thing to schedule sex and to have signals like, okay, at the weekend I dress differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for adding that. Yeah.
The dressing is one of my clients said, I always know my husband wants to have sex because he comes out of the bathroom without his pajama bottoms on. Such a turn off. It's like, oh my God, how unsubtle could you be? I don't like that. But you're right, you have to schedule and signal. It's the weekend now, it's the Sunday morning, it's the Saturday. And it's very important to do little things like maybe you light candles, maybe you put on romantic music, maybe you do different things. We clear all the computers out of the bedroom. And I think it's good to do the scheduling. After all animals respond to a signal. They know when the female wants to have sex because she's on heat and it signals, oh, she's ready. And in a long marriage, how long have you been, Tom, been together, is it?
We've been together for almost 20 years. We've been married for 18.
So in 20 years, it's about sending the right signals. And people really believe that it's very hard after 20 years to have a passionate sex life. I can tell you it's not hard at all, but you have to prioritize it. It's not like, oh, we get into bed and maybe we should have sex. It's still about making it a priority, making it important. And the way you make it important is to go, hey, Saturday night is our night, or Sunday morning, or Friday night. And that doesn't take the romance out of it. In fact, it puts the romance in. It says, I think enough of you. I've made this sacred time. And on a Saturday night, it's always the sheets are changed, the candles are lit, everything's out of the bedroom, the computers are gone, and I'm going to come in my high heels or whatever it is, I'm my purple underwear. I'm making an effort for you, but you're also making an effort for me because your phone is off and your head is now switched on to me. And a lot of people say, but that's an effort, isn't it? I'm like, of course, but aren't you worth the effort for both of you?
Generally speaking, if you look at couples, not every couple, but a lot of couples, the couples I see who have good relationships, they start out slower. The woman has more of a mental chemistry with her partner, which is she admires him, she finds him interesting, she cares about him, they have conversation. Okay, that's one. Then he does things for her. She responds emotionally and starts to feel she really goes from liking him to loving him. Then she goes from liking him to loving him to then feeling sexual chemistry. Okay, those are the first three. And when you have both those first three, then spiritual chemistry can come forth where you feel the most important thing is you share values. Sharing values is a very important thing. It doesn't mean you're the same. Differences actually creates attraction, but sharing values is that friendship that that you're just talking about, mutual respect for each other, that you share the same values. Like my wife and I have very different political ideas, but we're both very spiritual. And our processes of being spiritual are actually quite different. She's more of a nature lover, I'm more of a meditation. I go to the cosmos. And so, but we still have the same values of spirituality is very important. And how we express it might be different. So you could have two people who one's a Democrat, one's a Republican, but politics is very important to them. They value government. So suddenly they would have that place of compatibility. So that's values is more of a spiritual connection, chemistry, mental, spiritual, emotional, physical. Now for men, it starts generally with physical is the prerequisite. You've got to start with some physical or it's never going to be there. Biology is such that you're not going to ever have physical connection with everybody. There's a chemistry. And likewise, there's an emotional chemistry that's not going to fit with just everybody. But for a man, there's a developmental process. First, you feel a sexual connection with a woman. Then you're motivated to do things for her. See, doing things for her and then her appreciating you allows him to bond with her. Men do not bond if a woman just gives to him. Every woman that's come to me, and this is 40 years of counseling, who's unhappy in a relationship, always says, I do so much more than him. I do. I give. I don't get back. I said, yeah, you're training him not to give to you. 2, there's no room for him to give to you. 3, there's no motivation for him to give to you. If you give more to a man, you will always get less. You're actually making him weak and lowering his testosterone and increasing his estrogen by giving more. It's when men give more and women appreciate more that men bond with you. When men do things for you, you need help and he does it, he's now 1 step closer to bonding with you. See, this is the classic difference. Because women know, oh, if he does things for me, I would love him so much more. So she thinks, how do I get him to love me? I'll do things for him. And so he'll love you more. No, he'll love you less if you do things for him. He likes you doing things for him. Oh, I like everybody serving me and whatever. Then I'll just become a lazy, despotic king, which is what happens to the royal families. They're all narcissists. They're all cuckoo. They're all crazy because everybody does things for them, particularly for the males, because males have to earn their way. If you don't earn your way, you're a spoiled brat. This is why you'll see so many alcoholics and drug addicts are rich. And then you've got the other spectrum, which are the really poor ones, because you see poor people, they don't make a difference. They don't get paid for what they do. So they have weak testosterone levels. And you got rich kids, rich males who never had to earn their way. They got it given to them. They also didn't earn and get a result. Men have to do the difficult stuff, earn the love. And women have to feel that I don't have to earn it. I deserve it. See, this is like all the commercials for women. You deserve it.
You're worth it.
It touches, you're worth it. You deserve it. But the problem is that women are on their male side, and so they think they have to give more and do more to be worthy of it. And that actually is affirming that they don't deserve it unconditionally. You are beautiful. You are loving. You are caring. You are supportive. These are feminine qualities. You are emotional. You're sensitive. All those qualities mean you deserve to have someone be there for you and be of servant to you. And then naturally, you then feel even better when you give back. Giving back is the highest. So women have experienced someone giving to me and then I give back and that feels so good. So then they make the mistake of thinking giving makes them feel good. Giving doesn't make you feel good. Giving back is what makes you feel good. Giving back is unconditional giving. It's free give. You want to give, as opposed to giving to get. When you give to get, you train a man to become weak. When you give to get, your estrogen levels go down and your testosterone is being produced. So we're all confused today. The old systems work to various degrees, but we have advanced to another level where women are independent. And as soon as that happens, kabang, the hormones change. And we need a new set of social structures, communication skills, understanding of gender differences, so that we can create new rituals, like the dating ritual, for example. And you mentioned men paying for women. Actually, men buying a meal for women is very important dating ritual for bonding. He needs to feel, I did something of value for you, and you need to feel like, oh, isn't that nice? And many women won't even let a man pay for dinner because then they feel she's obligated to have sex with him. And that's putting her in the role of a whore. She's not a whore. You're not obligated to have sex with somebody just because they pay for your dinner. You gave him a gift by letting him pay for your dinner because you're enjoying it. This is what men need more than anything, is to feel that I make a difference. And if he doesn't make a difference, he's not going to bond with you. And you're not going to bond with him if he doesn't make a difference with you.
We are so hardwired to survive. And as primitive people, we could only survive by finding connection, avoiding rejection, because it wasn't that long ago that safety was a numbers game. You had to belong to a tribe and you couldn't make it on your own, which is why we're so terrified of rejection, because not long ago, being banished, being cast out, being marooned, being put into isolation was kind of a death sentence. In Romeo and Juliet, when they banished him, he said, well, I'd rather be killed, frankly, because there's nothing outside the city walls but purgatory. So we have this innate, inherited fear of rejection because we think it's going to kill us. But actually, you could live in an apartment on your own till you're 105, get everything delivered by Amazon, never see a soul, and you wouldn't die of rejection anymore. But you still feel as if you will. So can you talk about our primitive wiring and why men like to be admired, or why men like to feel they're of service, and why women feel that they shouldn't make the first moves, but men should.
Well, I think to your point, which you said, I think more eloquently than I would, these things, you know, I forget who I even saw talking about this, but the idea that these are ancient thoughts, they're not our thoughts. They long predate us. And if we can actually remember that, then we don't identify so much with those personal thoughts. If you can say, this feeling I have right now is, you know, one of my hobbies is boxing. And there's always a moment stepping into the ring, especially with a new sparring partner, where ego comes into it. And you have to, you know, a huge part of boxing is to actually let go of that part of yourself. And in that moment when I'm going, oh, you know, I'm almost equating how well I'm going to do with how much of a man I am, or whether I'm as strong as this person, or whether those aren't my thoughts. Those are thoughts that almost every man has had at some point in their life for as long as men have existed. And the same is true of women. These are not new thoughts. And I actually think embedded in there is the cure, is the answer, because we can actually stop identifying with it and start saying, this is so unoriginal. Yeah. This is not something that I need to take as important, because everyone is feeling this all the time. And it's one of the things I love about even I love getting together with male friends of mine and just talking about issues and our problems and what we're struggling with that week. Because anytime I got together with a friend recently who's a really, you know, like a real kind of winning kind of individual and whatever. And we got together and, you know, he said, oh, I've had a bit of a tough week. I've been eating badly all week, and and I had been beating myself up that week for not eating well, and for, you know, just reneging on certain habits that I'd tried to set in place. And then I hear this friend of mine say, I haven't eaten well all week. And I thought to myself, we do this thing in our own minds where we think that we are worse than everybody else.
Yeah. And everyone's better than us. Yeah,
and I do it too. And it's one of the reasons I love getting together with other people and hearing people talk about their stuff, because you just go, what is this thing that constantly makes us say we're worse than everybody else? Other people aren't suffering from this same problem I'm suffering from. And it is one of the reasons I wish in our society, and especially on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere else, I wish people would more authentically and sincerely talk about the things they struggle with and their vulnerabilities, because I do think that's the answer.
Well, you know, the basis of all friendship is that we choose people who share our vulnerability. It's the basis of AA. You go to AA and think, I thought I was the only person in the whole world who sold my kid's bike to buy some beer. And I just met someone who sold their kid's bike to buy some beer. It's like, oh, I like you. And I'm like you. And honestly, is the truth. We choose people who share our vulnerability, and yet we all try to go, no, I haven't got any vulnerabilities. I just pretend I'm great. I'm going to play hard to get. I'm going to act like I've got no problems. My life is so great. But the problem is we have to connect to people. And it's very hard to connect when you're pretending your life is perfect. So what do you think about this thing about play hard to get, be not available, pretend everything is amazing? And then you're more likely to get someone to want you, because we want what we can't have.
Well, I think that we attract at the frequency that we're playing at. Hard to get works on a certain crowd. And that crowd is playing at the same frequency as the person who's playing hard to get. It's a similar energy. And hard to get someone, but it turns out that person is a bit of a game player, or that person is someone who loses attention the moment they have that thing. So the problem with hard to get is you let your guard down at a point where you want to, because of course no one wants to maintain hard to get over a lifetime and a relationship and a marriage. So eventually you let your guard down and then discover that this person was more attracted to the chase than they were to you, because if it wasn't your character that won them over, if it wasn't if who you are normally is warm and compassionate and kind and intelligent and loving, and your hard to get act has masked those things in you, then the person hasn't gotten attracted to those things that ultimately they're going to realize you are. They're attracted to the dynamic, which is not sustainable.
And of course, hard to get. Really, what you should be saying is, I want to resonate a frequency where I'm valuable. I'd rather be on my own than be with someone who isn't right for me. That I respect myself enough. If you call me at 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning and go, hey, do you want to go out tonight? I might not necessarily play the game of, oh, I'm busy, but it's more like, well, you know, would it be, you should have called me last week. Obviously I make plans, but I don't think it's about being hard to get. It's about valuing yourself enough. So if someone says, hey, I thought I'd come round and bring a pizza, you go, oh, sorry, I did that when I was a student. But, you know, now, no, if you don't want to make an effort to pick me up and take me out, then I don't think I'm going to make an effort to sit and have a pizza with you. So it's not about being hard to get. It's about, what are you worth? You know, like if I remember years ago when I was at university, this guy got on the bus, he went, hey, do you want to come back to my house and cook me dinner? I'm like, no, of course I don't want to come back. I don't go.
A man on a bus said this.
Dinner. It's a very northern, that was a very Geordie thing. And I think he thought that it was a big compliment, that he really thought he could ask me, come back to my house and cook my dinner. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't even cook my own dinner at that level. I couldn't even cook, so there was no way I was only 19. I wasn't going
He said, this isn't good for you or me.
No, but you have to have a sense of yourself, which is, I'm worth better, I deserve better. Mm. You know, if you're not going to make an effort, if you're going to like look at all my friends and look at other women and not call when you say you're going to call and not turn up when you say you're going to turn up, then you're not showing me respect. But I have to show you that I'm the kind of person that says I'm worth better. So, for instance, if somebody shouted at me, I was filming a show and one of the guys on the show shouted at me and I said, oh, I don't let people speak like that. When I speak to everyone like that, I said, well, that's because they let you, but I don't let people shout at me. So come back when you can have a conversation. And he did, because it's about developing a sense of self where you can say, no, that's not okay. You know, I'm always surprised at women who say, my boyfriend won't let me go out. What do you mean? I'm not allowed to go out. I'm not allowed to wear these clothes. I'm not allowed to have conversations. He looks through my phone. And you have to have a sense of self that says, no, if we can't trust each other, then we just don't have a relationship.
That's absolutely right. And I think to add to that, I kind of wish more people would come to see showing interest in someone and having the kind of standards that you just laid out as not being mutually exclusive. It's entirely possible to tell someone how much you like them, to compliment them, to tell them how excited you would be to see them, but at the same time maintain certain boundaries and standards. Boundaries and standards don't have to mean coldness. They don't have to mean someone having to play the guessing game of whether you like them. If you go to see a person and you have the best date ever, or the two of you go and have a wonderful time together doing whatever you're doing, and then you come away and you don't feel a lot of energy from that person, and that person 4 weeks later or 3 weeks later messages you and has says, hey, how are you? And you're like, inside you're kind of like, we had a great time. Where the hell have you been? That I love when someone can, man or woman, maintain their vulnerability and their sense of warmth at the same time as having firm boundaries. If you could say to someone, I had such a great time with you when we were together and I really like you, but you kind of disappeared and so I'm not really sure what to do with this text. That is I call it the bliss point. The bliss point is a food industry term that describes the optimal level of salty and sweet in a food that makes it something that we can't stop eating. And there's a bliss point to communication. I think of that as the bliss point of communication, when you're simultaneously showing all of the warmth and kindness and loving nature that made someone like you in the first place, whilst also demonstrating boundaries.
Yeah.
Very, very attractive combination.
Yeah, I think that's so good for women to go, hey, we really had fun. I enjoyed your company, but it just doesn't work for me when you call me at 11 o'clock at night.
Yes.
It doesn't work for me when you just knock on my door in the middle of the night and think some kind of booty call is okay. I was working with a client once and he said something I never forgot. And he went, oh, do you know, I dated this. And she just sent me a text. And she said, I don't want to see you again because you didn't try hard enough in bed. He went, I'm so seeing her again. And he loved that she had actually sent him a text saying, you didn't try hard enough in bed. I was disappointed. I don't want to see you again. And he texted her and said, no, I'm really sorry. I was having a bad day. I was very tired. I can show you that I can give you much, much more. But most women wouldn't have the courage to do that, to actually call him up on the fact that he was selfish in bed. And he didn't think, oh, how rude. He thought, wow, what a woman. I'm going to go back and see her. Got a sense of herself. She can ask for what she wants. She can tell me this is not good enough. I deserve better. I deserve a man who really makes an effort in bed to please me. And if that's not you, don't call me again. But he was definitely calling her again because he wanted to be that man.
Well, of course, too many people are so passive that the problem with being passive is not just that being passive could be perceived as lack of confidence. It's also that it actually never successfully communicates to somebody what they did wrong and what you need for them to do better in order for the dynamic or the relationship to continue. And I think that's the sad part, is a lot of people never actually communicate what they'd like more of because they're worried that they're going to make things awkward, that they're going to come across as demanding. But as a result, people don't even know how to correct course.
I really would love you to talk about the biggest mistakes people make when they're looking for love.
I think one of the biggest mistakes is we have this philosophy that we can manifest anything, and they make this wish list to the floor, which is so rigid that there's no room for the magic. Like, I don't teach my clients to go, he's 6'2" and he's got to have this and he's got to have that. I say to them, if you met a 5'10" guy and he was everything to you and he was magically, you were so attracted, you had the best relationship, would you go, I'm going to send him back to God and ask for the 6'2" guy? So I like general statements. I'm attracted. We are compatible. He has my back. He's a loving, caring, kind person. And stay on simplicity. Because when you get this rigidness, you know, you're not the manufacturer of the product, you know, and I'm just the distributor of the product. So I can't say that there's a million of what you want out there. But I can say that if you do the work and you give it a sense of simplicity, it will come. It's those who are rigid have the hardest time in finding love.
It's like, what are you looking for? I want someone who looks amazing.
They've got to make $50 million a year.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, I get these requests like, it's Bill Gates, but looks like Brad Pitt. Okay, get in line. So it's not realistic. The other thing, I think, the second biggest mistake is that they go on the dates, they make the person in front of them their best friend after one cocktail, and they pump and dump their past. They tell their ex stories, and if they don't like women, it comes out. If they don't like men, it comes out. My father did this, my mother did that. It's like, you're on a date. It's supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be a common interest, values,
and
morals.
have some mystery, you know.
Mystery,
you want someone
mystique.
to come back for more.
Well,
some
social
mystery.
media's killed that. That's social media. That
I was
killed that.
in Frida Kahlo's house in Mexico last week. I love her. I love the house. And there was a lot of pictures of her and her husband. And she said, when I saw him, he looked like a toad. He was a little fat man with a great big tummy. And I looked at him, and it was love at first sight. And at one stage, he left her for her sister, and they got divorced.
I remember that in the movie.
He went back to her
Selma Hayek,
because they had a deep love. But I love the fact that she said he looked like a toad. And I thought, I don't know what it is, but he's my person. And I love that because it wasn't what he looked like. It was something about him, his energy. Yeah. And so it's such a shame when we go for looks, because that's the first thing that goes. Looks fade. What if you...
And dumb is forever, as Judge Judy would say.
Yeah, I love that. Dumb is forever.
Yeah.
You know, when you're looking for a person, you need to first of all think about what of the qualities that you like. I mean, for me, kindness. You know, kindness is so
and nurturing.
underrated.
Nurturing and kindness are very important to me.
Yeah.
I've had some mean men in my life. My dad was mean.
Yeah.
So one of the things we do in exercise is we say, okay, we're going to do the common denominator exercise. We're going to take your 4 most significant relationships. You're going to make a list of the good and the bad. In the bad column, something's going to show up. In the good column, something's going to show up. And it's going to be the same thing over. If you've been cheated on, if you've been dumped, you know, breadcrumbed, phantomed, ghosted, whatever. And so they go, oh my God, this is what's happening. I go, now go to childhood. Because, you know, you've taught me this. Like when we do this in hypnosis, we go back in time.
Well, 90% of our issues in a current relationship come from our childhood.
Right. So who's the parent that did this to you? Then you go back and you're like, and I do this on Clubhouse. And I go back and I go, okay, and I can do it pretty fast. And I'm like, all right, who's the person who did this? My father. And what did he do? And it's like, there it is.
Yeah.
You made a decision in that moment, as we know, the mind is self-protective, to only get men like this, you know, which basically won't let you fall in love with the real person, because you can fall in love with the real, that's a real risk. They could leave you, you know, you could be banished, they could leave you. And I said, and we have to undo that messaging.
Yeah.
And that's where we start the work, because it's not just going to a bar and picking up a guy. You have to know when you go to the bar, what are you going to attract and what are you going to accept? Acceptance is very important. I was at a bar Friday night in Orange County. Right before I went to the bar, I saw a guy that was cute. My girlfriend is my recruiter for my company. She's like, I'm going to go over and get his number. I know him. So I said, okay, see if he's interested. And I leave to go to the next location. And she comes to the next location and goes, all right, here's his card. He wants you to call him. And I said, I don't call men. They have to call me. I'm the beta, they're the alpha, which is very important in the process of dating. Who's going to be the leader? Who's going to be the follower? Not a negative way. And he goes, well, he wants you to call him. So I said, no, give him my number. So she texts the number, goes, have her call me. And we're going back and forth. And I'm like disgusted. We go to the next location, Maserativille, the richest people in Orange County. Lots of older men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Tons of women at the bar. Not one man is buying a woman a drink. They're talking to the women. They're at the back where they're waiting for women to parade by. They are the lazy lions, I like to call. And we're sitting at a table, and my recruiter's like, get up and mingle, get up and mingle. I'm like, no, if they like me, they'll come to me. I don't hunt. I'm a gatherer. So 2 women pass by and they go, this is the worst bar in the world, the richest men in Orange County. They can't even buy drinks. We have to buy our own drinks. I'm like, let's go home. Because right then and there, I saw the entire experience. So then a guy sits down who knows my recruiter, sits at the table. He gaps for an hour. He owns the biggest yacht in Newport. And I'm like, he's taking up our time. He didn't even ask you to drink. Now I drink water. I'm not a drinker. So they're drinking and I'm thinking to myself, these are like children. They are girls. They're men with vaginas. They don't have this hunter mentality, which is what the women want. So why spend time with them?
Yeah.
Why go to these people? If you can discard all the looky-loos, the 85%ers, you'll have 15% left, which is quality. You'll build on that. You'll feel the vibration of the giver, not the taker. You'll go out into public and another giver will come and another giver. It's repeating the process over and over again.
It's important in a relationship to understand that most men, but some women too, men like to hunt and feel they've earned what they've got.
Right, but the thing is, we've got women spreading their legs for a song.
Yeah.
You know, you used to get pizza in a movie. You don't get that anymore.
Yeah, you know how a man likes to earn it, because if you have sex with a guy, it's very important that you have an orgasm, because they feel like, I did that. I did that.
Yeah, they got something out of it.
Yeah,
I'm
had
a good
one,
lover.
but yeah, because it's important that they feel I earned this, and that's why it sounds so 60s. Don't give it away. But my friend got married. I don't know what she said. I had sex with my husband on the first day. That was in a wedding
there's
speech.
always an exception
and they're
to
still
the
together.
rule.
It's not about don't put out and hold back. But there is a very important element of that. What are you worth? Are you worth pursuing? Are you worth making an effort for?
But it's also biological.
It's
because
really
there
important.
is, if you have estrogen in your body, you're not in menopause, you have lots of estrogen surging, you now have oxytocin, men don't have it. You bond with them, they're not bonded to you after sex. Now you're stalking them at 2 a.m. and dropping off the chocolate chip cookies at their house just to see who's there. And you're obsessed and spinning.
Yeah, because you're giving and not receiving.
And they're going, I'm not attached to you. I have no oxytocin. So you are at a risk. Oxytocin was because in the early days of when you're 14, you got your period, 12, 13, 14, you got married. You had a baby. You know, that was to bond to your husband. Now we are independent women living into their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and some of us have never been married and successful. And, you know, if you're in the estrogen zone, you're at risk because you could lose your life over it. You could go crazy and insane.
But also what's interesting is that women really should need to be connected before they have sex, but men need sex to feel connected. So there's always a massive
men don't fall in love
disconnect.
through sex. And nobody understands that.
But
only
women
emotional.
do.
They fall in love emotionally.
But women do, which is really interesting. So let's talk about your mindset. Tell me about some of your issues in dating and life where you've really
Marisa,
had
you're
to...
going to kill me here.
You've really
knowing
had to
that
use
you're
your
my
mindset.
friend and you know everything about me. Well, I mean, we've worked together and I've done 2 hypnosis sessions with you, which were extraordinary. When I was 11 years old, my father was a drunken alcoholic and he was having financial problems. And he pointed to me and he said, you made me lose all my money. Now, I didn't, of course, and I took it in. Now, when I was 11, I didn't know not to take things in, which, you know, we learn later in life.
You don't really have much choice because you learn what you live.
Right. So I took it in. And then every single person after that had a financial problem that I dated. And they were like, they couldn't get, and I didn't. I was successful. I was a good pivoter. If I lost my job, I had another idea, or I opened my own company, you know, things like that. I was a good pivoter. And I was always researching and looking for cool things to do. And I always was creative and I always knew that I can make money. The people I were with had, I don't know how to get money. And they were usually kids that were raised by wealthy parents that didn't train them to make money, which was interesting. I don't know where that came from. But every single person I dated down financially. And it ruined my relationships. I was engaged twice. And I just kept saying, why does this keep repeating itself? On the last relationship I had, David, everybody saw on Millionaire Matchmaker, I changed my mindset. And then I came to you and I did hypnotherapy session. And I said, oh my God. This is the program that I've been running in my computer brain my whole life. I don't have to accept those people. Now, after I did this and I broke up with David, people still showed up that were broke. But I said, no, thank you. I'm not interested. No, thank you. And I could spot it as I spoke to them for 5 minutes. I'm like, he's got that problem. Recently in quarantine, I made a quarantine buddy and he came out to visit. And we met online and we were going to date, but I wasn't attracted when I met him. And I kind of felt he was lying to me and had a financial problem. But I was like, he's not staying in my house. He's around the corner. I'll go out a few times. I'll see if I like him. And I picked it up right away immediately. And I just said, no, thank you, God. And I really haven't attracted anyone with no money since.
Well, what you've done, because I know when we worked together, I was telling you that the most vexing thing about the human mind is hardwired to return to what's familiar. So,
and I also think one of the things is self-help people, which I'm a helper. You know, I consider myself one of the 144,000 light workers on the planet. We are taught to be like Jesus, to give. And that's not true.
Because if you give and you can't receive, that's not good.
We're not Mother Teresa.
It's like when you give a breath, you have to take one.
Right.
And when you take a breath, you have to give one. So that's balance.
So if 2 givers get together, they learn how to receive. If 2 takers get together, they learn how to give. And I always tell people, don't go with a taker when you're a giver. He will or she will destroy you. You'll have nothing left for yourself. You will get sick. This is how disease is created. Nobody talks about that. It will physically manifest in your body. And so once I realized that, I said, I always check now when I'm dating, is he the type of man that's a giver versus a taker? Because I was raised by a taker And I also dated mostly takers. So I'm like, I can't do that anymore.
And also you had more than one father. And so,
Oh yeah, well I had 3 fathers.
I know.
And I was adopted. So I started out with, I'm not good enough. That's the mantra.
You started out with rejection.
Yeah.
And you got rejected 3 times by 3 dads, which is
hard.
Almost impossible for a woman, because when we're born as a child, we need to connect. Our whole survival is I've got to connect. But if you're rejected a lot, that whole familiar, unfamiliar is really frustrating, because once the mind works out what's familiar, it will go back. And we're wired to remember what's familiar, but we're also wired to run away from what's not familiar. That's why you have 2-year-old kids who go, I don't want to eat that. What they're saying is, I don't know that. Is unfamiliar, because imagine your little kid wandering around on the prairie and picking poisonous berries. They'll only eat what they already know, because it makes them safe. And we're the same. I'm only going to date what I know because I'm safe.
But that's only going to come towards me.
Yeah.
So just because it comes towards you, you can say no thank you.
Well, the thing that helps you more than anything is to understand, here's a fact. Your primitive brain wants to go back to what's familiar and wants to avoid what's unfamiliar. But here's another fact. You can make anything you like familiar. I mean, put a bit of silicone on your finger and ram it in your eye. How unfamiliar is that? Do it every day. It becomes normal. Cleaning your teeth, peeing in a toilet wasn't familiar once, but then you begin to make it familiar. And so if you want to have a great relationship, look at what you want. If you haven't got what you want in your life, a part of your mind thinks you don't want that. That great person will hurt you, but that not great person over there, they're never going to stay anyway, so you're safe with them. So you have to decide what you want, and then you have to say, you know what? I'm going to make this familiar. I mean, for me, I was a head teacher's daughter. And so I grew up with a father who always made other people's kids more important than me. He was a great head teacher. He was a great person. He wanted to be a great dad, but he was very unhappily married to my mother. They had nothing in common. And so I grew up always feeling that I wasn't important. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't interesting enough. And of course, I then dated, guess what, men who never made me feel important. And one day I thought, you know what? I actually, it was the funniest thing. I was having lunch with someone, and I suddenly said to him, oh, you're like it. He was trying to tell me what I could and couldn't eat. Don't eat that. It will make you fat. You don't need that because we're having dinner later. You shouldn't have an ice cream now. It's not. And I said, you're like a headmaster. I went, oh, my God. This is my father. I'm actually with my dad. From that minute, I could never have sex with him again. I had to end that relationship, which was weird because we were on holiday. And then I had my light bulb. Oh, I'm dating people like my dad, but I'm trying to change the ending. And now I'm going to make that unfamiliar, because so many of us are working. Let's find what's familiar and change the ending. I've got a cold, distant person. I'm going to turn them into a pussycat.
You can't
I've
change
got an
anyone's
absent
behavior.
person. I'm going to make them present. Life is too short to work to change the beginning. So I thought, right, I'm going to make that unfamiliar. Every time I meet someone, I'm just going to say I'm making that unfamiliar. And I'm making a great government. If I hadn't done that, I never would have met and married my husband. I had to make what I needed familiar, a really kind guy. And we talked a little bit about, I mean, for me, I thought, what do I want? Funny.
John's very funny.
So screamingly funny. Intelligent, kind. And also...
He adores you.
I know, and I adore him. And because... I travel. I couldn't be with a banker who only gets 4 weeks holiday a year. How would that work? So they had to be someone that's independent.
A lot of the self-help community has the man behind the woman, or the woman behind the, and it's such a great thing to have. That's the one thing I've always wished to manifest, is to have someone run the business with me, because
but
it's
I really thought about what I
exhausting.
wanted, and even a family man loves kids, because I have a child, and you have to love that. Having someone who's never had a kid, when they're going to take on your kid, doesn't always work. It can work really well. And I even wanted someone who loved cooking. And
Which he cooks.
Oh, he loves it.
He's an amazing cook.
And he even loves shopping for food.
You hate cooking. So
I don't do that.
You don't like anything.
No. But I thought about what I really wanted, and I decided to make it familiar. And lo and behold, he showed up. We got married 10 months later. And we're blissfully happy, but it's because I looked at the qualities, kindness. Do I want someone with a six-pack that's 6'4"? Not really, because I had that and it was lovely. But when you're with someone who's drop dead gorgeous, after a while you don't see it. And when you're with someone who may not be, when you love them, they become utterly gorgeous to you. And so it's really important for women and men to think about, what do I want? Why have I not got it? What am I making familiar that's bad? And what am I making unfamiliar that's good? And then reverse it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make someone who, and women say to me, oh yeah, I met someone, they were too good for me. What are you saying?
They really say that?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
And men too, they were too good. You know what they're saying? Their behavior was unfamiliar. I date people that dump me, cheat on me with my friends.
That's terrible.
I've met a really nice guy. I had exactly that situation. I coached a girl. And I said, you know, you're just going out with your dad over and over again. So I did a little session with her about the familiar. Mm-hmm. Off she went back. She came and said, it was amazing. I met this guy. He was all over me. He called me, he picked me up, he took me out, he sent me a text. I'm not seeing him again. Why not? He's too good for me. I said, no. His behavior is unfamiliar to you. And if you stay with it, guess what? It will become familiar. She's married to him now.
That's awesome.
But you've got to make a choice. What am I going to make familiar and unfamiliar? Being dumb, being not called, being rejected. And now I'm so happy that it's hard to imagine. I was a single parent. I raised my daughter entirely on my own. How I made that being second best familiar. And then I made it unfamiliar. It's a choice. And then you've got to keep repeating it and making this familiar and it really works. Check out my next video here. Play the only part we've ever known, and then you make that part your own way. You go, you know what? I think it's time for a new part. I was told I could never, ever have children. My whole RTT training was based on being told I couldn't have a baby.